All right. Well, good evening, everybody. We're going to get started here. My name is Jen Nectarline, College and Career Counselor at Hunterdon Central. Welcome to our admissions panel. Just so you know, if you're tuning in, tonight's program is being recorded and will be available on our Hunterdon Central YouTube station within the next couple of days. I am joined tonight for this annual event where we bring together several admission friends from offices all over the country. Tonight we have a lot of really well-known schools that our students have been applying to for many years and going to, and just some fantastic people in admissions here to join us. So just so you know, if you're tuning in from home, wherever you're at the bottom of your screen, like most Zoom webinars, we have turned on our Q&A feature. If something comes up tonight, question you want to ask, thoughts that you have, go ahead and pop them right there in the Q&A and we will try to get to them. Either by answering them live or someone will go ahead and type a response to you. But at this point in time, we're going to get right underway with some introductions. We're going to learn a little bit about the schools that are represented tonight. You can get an idea of what some of those are just by seeing our attendees here and taking a peek at their backgrounds. I'm going to have all 5 of them introduce themselves, talk with you a little bit about their institution, and then we are going to dive right into some really great topics, all about college admissions, helpful at all grade levels for students and for parents. So stick around. We'll be closing our program tonight right around 8 p.m. I'm going to kick it off with Sam from South Carolina. Take it away, Sam.
Thanks, Jen, and good evening, everybody. My name is Sam Walensky. I am currently the regional representative for the University of South Carolina, who oversees recruitment in New Jersey and Eastern Pennsylvania, as well as Delaware. This is my 3rd year at USC. To give a little bit of context, we are the flagship for the great state of South Carolina. We are in Columbia, South Carolina, so we are in the state capital. It's more of a suburban city, though. I compare it very kindly to more like New Brunswick mixed with like downtown Princeton versus like a true city institution. We are home to about 27,000 undergraduate students, between undergrad and grad about 37,000. We have over 100 different majors, including 60 nationally ranked programs. We have a large number of study abroad, internship, and we are a tier 1 research institution as well. But outside of that, our students really want to have a lot of fun on campus. We have over 750 student club and organizations. We have 70 club and intramural sport teams if you're not interested in playing D1, but you want to play at the collegiate level. And we have 19 Division I athletic programs, including just recently the national title for women's basketball. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. Hopefully you all watched the game, but if not, don't worry, I'll send you all the highlights because I watch it every day. Just kidding. But I'm excited to be here. I love working with my students and answering questions and helping them through this process, both to understand South Carolina and just admissions in general. So thank you guys for all having me tonight.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. And those of you just joining us, we're just moving through some intros, and that was Sam from University of South Carolina. I am going to turn it over to Stacy from Penn State.
Thanks so much, Jen, and thank you all for having us tonight. I'm excited to be here to talk with Hunterdon Central families. So my name is Stacy Kowalczyk, and I am from Penn State University. We are the flagship institution of the state of Pennsylvania. We are a multi-campus system. We have 20 campuses all over the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. My guess is you are probably most familiar with the University Park campus, which is the largest campus located in the center of the state of Pennsylvania, actually like the dead center of the state of Pennsylvania. Our total population, our student enrollment at the university is about 88,000 students. Our largest campus, that University Park campus, has about 46,000 students. And then our other campuses offer campus locations with as few as 400 students up to 4,000 students. And I tell you that because one of the things about Penn State is we like to think that there is sort of a spot and a fit for everyone, depending on what it is you want to study and what type of environment you want to be in. We like to talk about the options. So you have lots of campus options, depending on how far you want to be from home and what size campus you're interested in. But academically, all of our campuses offer the same programming. So no matter what campus you start at, no matter what campus you finish at, your degree says the Pennsylvania State University. We do have 275 academic programs for you to choose between, 1,200 clubs and organizations, Big Ten Division I athletics, I did very proudly watch your team, Sam, do amazing in the tournament. And what you may not be aware of is our wrestling team just won the national championship as well. So we were really proud of that for going down that route. I'm happy to talk about that. Not that I consider myself a Division One. I do consider myself a Division One spectator is probably a good way to put it. So there's lots of opportunity either to take part or really get involved in the school spirit and the culture. And the last thing I'll say about that school spirit, and something that we are really proud of at Penn State, is we are home to the world's largest alumni association. So if you are from Hunterdon Central, you probably see the bumper stickers driving up and down Route 31 that say we are Penn State. And that is something we are certainly very proud of. But happy to be here tonight and to talk to you about the admissions process.
Great. Thank you, Stacy from Penn State. I'll turn it over to Stefano from Lynn University.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jen, so much for having us here. My name is Stefano Papaleo. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission at Lynn University. Lynn is a much smaller place than the previous two. We have about 3,500 students. We're located about an hour north of Miami on the east coast of Florida and in the beautiful city of Boca Raton, Florida. I am originally from Rome, Italy. I was actually recruited to play tennis for Lynn back in the early 90s. And I told my parents I would be there for 1 year. And I've been at Lynn for 30 years now. So it's been my home, has been my family. And that's exactly what it feels like when you come and visit Lynn. It really does feel like you're coming to a family. We are the most diverse and the most international university in the state of Florida by percentage. And we do a lot of things that are very, very different in higher education. We just during COVID, we moved to a block schedule. So students take one class each month or maximum 2 classes each month instead of taking all the courses all at the same time. And we did that because of COVID, because we wanted to have a little bit more of a flexible schedule. And what happened is that the students were doing so much better in it. We're a lot more, they were getting better grades or better attendance, and they were a lot more involved in the classroom discussions, because they're just longer and just more, you meet basically every day for 2.5 hours. So we were going to go back to the old schedule, and we're like, no, this is working much better than the one before. So we've stayed a block schedule. So that's one good thing that happened for us because of COVID. So not all things were bad about COVID. We're also an Apple Distinguished School. So we have no books at Lynn University. Everything is delivered electronically through an iPad Pro that every student gets a new iPad Pro with a keyboard and an Apple Pencil. And we design most of the content for our students. So our professors have designed about 78 books that the students get to use. So we have designed the most content on any university in the world. So that's very, very exciting. It's a kind of a different way to go about having the curriculum delivered to the students. A couple of unique programs that we have at Lynn. We have a top flight school. So if you want to become a professional pilot and you want to be in South Florida, Lynn is a perfect place for you. In 2017, we purchased an art school. So we offer BFA programs in animation, graphic design, illustration, game art, just the same type of program that you would be able to receive at an art school. But within a proper comprehensive university. So it's quite neat. And we also have a very strong athletic program. We're competing in the NCAA Division II, and we've won 25 national titles. Unfortunately, I didn't provide any titles to the university. So don't look at me for suggestions. But again, I'm very, very excited to be here. We loved, we're going to be answering a lot of your questions. And once again, thank you for having us as part of your community tonight.
Thanks, Stefano. Wonderful. We'll turn it over to Jordana from Montclair.
Hi, thanks, Jen. Thank you for having us all. My name is Jordana Maziars. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Montclair State University. Hopefully lots of you here tonight are kind of familiar, at least with us, up in Montclair, New Jersey. We are a large R2 research university with bachelor's, master's, and doctoral students on campus. We have about 22,000 students on 2 campuses, both Montclair and now our new Bloomfield campus, which is very exciting. We have an average class size of 25, so even though we are a large university, that classroom experience is still pretty small, and we have only a handful of large lecture halls on campus. So by the time your student is in courses for their major, they're really going to have a very community feel inside the classroom and those connections with their faculty. We are a D3 campus at Montclair and a D2 campus at Bloomfield. We have over 300 programs that students can choose from, including more combined bachelor master's programs than any other school in the state of New Jersey. We have about 100, and those include 5-year bachelor master's programs, as well as 4+1 bachelor MBA programs. We have bachelor's, master's in public health, a whole slew of programs. So a great opportunity for our high achieving students to, save some money and get their master's degree a lot faster. We are really proud to be a place that values diversity, equity, inclusion, and student belonging. We've been ranked a top LGBTQ friendly institution by Campus Pride for over a decade. We have a dedicated Office of Student Belonging that helps make sure that our students find their place in our community. Even though we are a large place of, like I said, about 22,000, our resident community is about 5,500 students. So it's a smaller community within a large place. And obviously a lot of you families, if you're considering Montclair, your student will live on campus. So that's kind of who they would be with in their residential community. We're really proud to always be ranked like a top value institution by Wall Street Journal and Forbes, and a best value by Washington Monthly and all those other great places. So looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jordana. And last but not least, from Lehigh, Katie.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. My name's Katie Matan. I'm one of the assistant directors of admission at Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We're about a quick trip down 78, bearing any traffic or accident issues as always, but in a good 45-minute drive. I always say far enough away from home, but close enough to go home if needed. But we are a mid-sized institution. We are research-based. We're about 5,800 undergraduate students with about 1,600 to 1,700 graduate students as well. So it puts us a little above 7,500 in terms of overall student population on campus. We have 4 undergraduate colleges that make up the undergraduate experience academically at Lehigh. We have our College of Arts and Sciences, our College of Business, our College of Health, and then our PC Rawson College of Engineering and Applied Sciences. So a good array of academic focus for students to kind of pick and choose what they're interested in. And I always like to say Lehigh is a great place to come and not have any idea what you want to do. You are going to pick and apply to one of the 4 colleges and then kind of figure out major-wise once you're on campus. So you have tons of ability to be fluid in your academic choices and not being siloed into one certain pathway. We are Division I sports as well. We're a part of the Patriot League, so a very rigorous academic athletic conference. We actually have the most played sports rivalry with Lafayette, which is about 20 minutes from us. We like to call them the other L school in this case. But the most played rivalry in NCAA, we had game 158 this past fall. So school spirit on campus is big as a part of being a part of the Lehigh community and being able to bring that community and collaboration factor together. We have about 250 plus different clubs. We are an NGO, so we have an NGO status, which is a non-governmental organization. So we have a great partnership with the United Nations. We also are the only institution that has physical space in the NASDAQ Center out in San Francisco, California. So we have what we call our Western Regional Office. So tons of ability to be able to explore what you're truly interested in and what you're passionate about. We are ranked in a lot of different categories as well. Top, graduating salary, mid-career salary, return on investment. And then this past fall, we're ranked number 14 by Wall Street Journal in terms of best college. So very outcome-based and seeing the successes that you have as a Lehigh alum. I'm really excited to get to chat with you all. We actually have had a former Hunterdon Central graduate in our office. He is now one of our assistant soccer coaches, which is awesome. But I'm really excited to get to chat with you all as I have a great relationship with you all, being so close to Hunterdon Central. So really excited to chat with you all tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie. And thank you to the five of you. As I'm sitting here listening, as much as I know these institutions, I'm learning something as each of you gave your intros and your bio. So thank you all so much for being here and carving out this time. For those of you that may not have a total handle on the timeline, at April 17th, my five colleagues here joining me on the screen are really busy finalizing and building their next incoming class and all that goes with that. So thank you again for carving out the time. And when you're joining us tonight, you may wonder, how did Mrs. N or Jen, however you know me as a college counselor, how did she come up with these schools? How do we pick? Well, every year we pick different schools. So know that because we do matriculate our students to over 170 schools every year across the US and sometimes even beyond. But we like to pick a variety. So you will see Jordana here from a state university. You'll see some large out-of-state public universities where we tend to matriculate a lot of our students. You'll see an out-of-state private school like Lehigh, and then another out-of-state private school like Lynn. And I've had the good fortune of successfully, as of Stefano, recently this winter, I can finally say I've been to all five. Obviously, some a little bit more than others. I grew up just outside of State College in Pennsylvania. Montclair, I visited in December for a wonderful counselor program. Been out to Bethlehem many times on Katie's campus and have had the privilege to get down to Columbia, but I did get down to Boca Raton. Thank you again, Stefano, for an incredible experience. And that's important to us, that we can educate our students not only on schools that we've heard of or learned about, but have actually seen and been to. So thank you all for being here. Let's dive in. I see the Q&A is already being used. Folks, if you're just joining us, please take note of the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Throw anything in there that you'd like. We will try to answer a lot of them live. Otherwise, we'll type some thoughts in there, and then the whole audience will get to see any answered questions. So we're going to start right where we are. April of the academic year. Our seniors, we were having a quick chat before we started tonight here on the webinar about seniors and what's going on. I don't know how many you've got out there. I can see some names I recognize, but I'd love for you to talk of however many of you want to chime in about what you saw in this year's applicant pool. It's been a wild year. We know that the financial aid and FAFSA process has really given us quite a shake this year as we move through this college admission cycle. But I'd love to know any trends that you saw in this year's applicant pool, in enrollment in general, as your teams were out recruiting. Just what was the 23-24 application cycle like? What kind of light can you shed on it for our folks listening tonight and later on?
I guess I'll start.
You go. You can go.
Thanks, Rodonna. So for South Carolina, I can say we started off on a great foot. We increased our applications up to about 52,000 applications this year that we received. About 75 ballparking here on the percentage, roughly, of our students that do apply to the university are coming from out of state. So that's pretty consistent with years past. I always like to say, think of it as all of our in-state students are applying, but that's one state versus the 49 other states, plus so many out-of-state countries as well. Our acceptance rates have decreased in terms of our out-of-state admission. As a public school, similar to how Montclair as a public school is going to have priority to New Jersey residents, we are going to prioritize admission first to our South Carolina resident students. So it has made the competition for admission to the University of South Carolina all the more great. What I'm noticing now, though, in this crazy time, and what I think is going to be a continuing thread, is that for all the students out here, you all, and for the parents, the generation of students that we're currently in, I think are the most financially conscious students that I have worked with in the 7 years that I've been in admissions. They are waiting for FAFSAs. They know that they hear the student loan crisis on social media, in television media. And I think what I'm seeing on my end is that a lot of our students are, even though they might have a dream school, whether it's South Carolina or another institution, they don't also want to go into college debt. So I think what we're seeing right now is a lot more students who are willing to go the cheaper route and still get an excellent education, even if it's not landing them at what they considered their dream school, which for us, it's shown us that like we've pulled from our wait list this year, and we've been able to award some merit scholarship appeals to students who are saying that we are a top choice for them, but they need some additional scholarship help to make it a more affordable option in comparison to schools like Montclair, as an in-state institution. And I think that's great, because one of the things that I always talk about with students when they're just starting this process is to have those authentic conversations with your family members regarding cost of attendance and what's affordable and what's not affordable, because I'll never counsel a student to go to any school if it means graduating with so much debt. So I think overall, from the students that I've talked to, especially with March, April, May, heading into May, I should say, I am seeing a lot more students that are just so much more financially aware of what thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loan debt could really do to them. And I'm in awe, because I wish I had that sense of knowledge when I was going through the process. And I think it's allowing them to really weigh a number of options, and they're really just going to look at every sort of angle before they make their final decision.
So I will say, for a place like Lehigh, I think one of the biggest things that stood out to us this year was, one, we broke our record last year in terms of number of applications. So kind of the ease at which it is for students to apply to colleges. I think a lot of places saw a good increase in the number of applications that they received this year. What I will say is we filled, for a class of 1,500, we filled over 60% of our first year class in early decision. And that seems, having conversations with some of my other colleagues at similar institutions, seems to be also a theme this year, is that a lot of schools who offer early decision filled a lot of their first year class with those early decision applicants. I think it's becoming more of a trend that, you have students, again, it's all about fit. And I think, very much like Sam said, we will never advise students to, go to an institution that's going to put them in tons and tons of debt after graduating. And I always, talk with families and talk with students and say, I don't want you to sell your mortgage. I don't want you to sell your car to make it affordable for you to come to a place like Lehigh. It has to be a good fit. And I think you're going to hear that word a lot, whether you are a senior, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, or whether you're a first year, sophomore, junior going through this process. It's about fit, and it's academic fit, social fit, financial fit. And then what it comes down to with early decision is, you have that one place that you can truly see yourself calling home for the next 4 years. And I think, for those that have that opportunity to apply early decision where that fit is truly there, institutions are really seeing, if you want to be at our institution, we want you to be here. So I think that was one of the biggest shifts that we saw. We're usually pretty high in the number of early decision applicants that we fill our first year class with, but this was the highest we've ever had. I think over 60% is a lot. And it brought our acceptance rate down pretty significantly this year as well. So I think that was one of the biggest trends that we noticed at Lehigh.
So I'm going to take us in a little bit of a different direction. And, we too at Montclair have had a double-digit increase in applications this year, which we've seen for the past several years. But I hesitate to offer that because I know that when students and families hear this, they just think about, oh my gosh, that's going to make it that much harder for me to get in, and it adds to the stress. And I don't want to do that. So there's been a lot of ways that Montclair has tried to make this process less stressful. In my opinion, and our prevailing sort of philosophy is, college is the hard part, right? The education is the hard part. The admissions process really shouldn't have to be. High school is the hard part, right? Doing like that work and getting academically prepared. So this year we saw a lot of interest in our early bird program, which is not binding. And it is for high school juniors who can apply to Montclair now and just know if they're in. and know what kind of scholarship they're getting over the summer. We'll tell them by July. So we're in the third year now. So the second group of early birds came through this past year, and we had a couple thousand. And we weren't quite sure, but I think it shows how stressed students are at all academic preparedness levels. And we're sort of committing ourselves to try to be part of the solution in that regard, and just offering like a non-binding opportunity. So what have we seen from our applicant pool? It is just as academically prepared as prior years. We have about a 3.3 average, like a B+ student is our our average student. Just as diverse. We are seeing major increases in out-of-state and international applications, which is great. Of course, our priority will always be to serve the citizens of the great state of New Jersey, but it's always exciting to, make sure that Montclair is getting its flowers, I guess, from other parts of the country, and internationalizing is a big goal for the university as well. So that's what we've seen for application trends this year so far.
Jen, do you want to go through everyone, or?
You should go right ahead. I kind of like this opening question. If Stefano and Stacy, anything you guys can think of to add, either from your own institution or just generally what you've been seeing.
Sure. So Lynn is a much smaller, much newer institutions compared to most of the others that are here on the panel. So, having been at the university for a long time, I have a lot of historical knowledge of the university. And if you go back 10 years ago, we were half the size. We had 1/3 of the applications. So the last 10 years have been really transformative for the institution. We went from 2,500 applications for 400 spot to about 10,000 applications for 800 spots at the university. So it's been really, really fun to have seen, the kind of like the rise of the institution, and having been part of that transformation. It's been very, very satisfactory, right? In terms of the work that we've put in to really be out there and to really make sure that that people understand, who is a good match, who is a good fit. We're talking about the word fit, for our institution. One thing that we noticed this year compared to the previous years is that I mentioned that we have a flight program at the university. We have a College of Aeronautics with a flight program, and talking to my colleagues from other institutions that have flight programs, that area is completely blown up. So so our program was filled by November. We don't have a lot of spots for that program, but that never happened before. From what we're seeing is that a lot more students are interested in the in becoming pilots. There is a huge shortage in the industry. So if I can give a suggestion, if anyone that is listening is interested in applying to universities that have a flight program, apply as early as possible. And make sure that you do your research, make sure that you pick the place that it's best for you, and do it as early as possible, because there's just not enough spots in the country. I'm not talking about Lynn, I'm talking about all the schools. There's really not a lot of schools that have flight programs. So make sure that you kind of figure out which place you want to go to, and hit it hard and hit it soon in terms of that.
I think these were really great insights so far. I don't know how much I can add that hasn't already been said, but I will tell you and let you in on a few things. No one has yet mentioned the Supreme Court decision, which certainly played like a back end part of our process. I mean, it's not quite as visible for students as you were going through the application process, but on our end, it took an enormous amount of time and technical work to remove any information that we are not allowed to see any longer on an application. And whether it was used or not used in an application doesn't really matter, but it should no longer be visible to admissions counselors, any of that information. So there was an enormous amount of coding power and IT power that had to go into our admissions process before us as counselors were able to start reading applications. So I think something that students saw this year, and probably will continue. I mean, we work on early action, which means if you apply by November 1st, you're guaranteed an admissions decision by December 24th. And for us, that's always, years and years. I've been here for 17 years. So like for us, that was always like, okay, you'll hear by like December 10th usually. But like it was pushed right up to the 24th. And I mean, we did everything we could to get decisions out. And that's our guarantee to you. And we worked around the clock to get those decisions out. But we as counselors had a much shorter amount of time with our applicant pools due to all the processing that had to change based on a Supreme Court ruling in a very short amount of time. So I mean, that's just to give you some context about what was going on that last year. And we spun up, and you have to follow the ruling. We spun up as quick as we could, but right now our tech teams are working really hard to like streamline that and make it better. So this upcoming cycle, we should go back to having the appropriate amount of time with our applications. That's like, our fingers crossed, and my teams wants their right amount of time. So they can read applications well, right? And like do the thorough application review. And I think, we did that this year to the best of our ability, but you did see some pockets of applications be deferred, right? And we don't always love to do that. We'd really like to be able to get you your admissions decision by December 24th. But circumstances out of our hands, our applications were up about 10%. And I mean, I'm talking about 120,000 applications, right? Like this is an enormous amount of applications. And we had like close to 14 less days to work with the applications than we would on any other year. So I think that's something just to be aware of. And I will also throw out, because I saw the question in the chat come in, that there was a question about transfer applications. And I will also tell you that we are working to become more transfer friendly. We see tons and tons of transfer applications, and I highly encourage that. But we are really trying to be as friendly as we can in the transfer space due to everything everybody has said. I mean, it's a great option to do your first few years of your education at a local community option. And you guys are lucky where you are. You have great options. Our ECC is great that you can get some of those credits under your belt in an affordable way, and then transfer to another institution to complete your degree. So those would be the two things that I would throw on top of all the great insight we had.
Great. Thank you, Stacy. So, I always take notes. I learn things from you guys, even though we're in the process here of presenting out to our community. And there's a couple trends I heard, and I think it's important to bring them up because I think as school counselors and as students felt them. I heard a lot of increase in applications. I feel like I hear that every year. So kudos to you and your recruitment efforts. You guys are doing the right thing. But I can tell you, as a college counselor at a high school with 2,500 plus students, they're applying to more. Our students, our average application has gone into the double digits, as it hovered around 8 to 9 for so many years of my 16 or 17 years at Central. And it's up into the double digits now as we run their numbers on the class of 24. And I think students are just putting more schools on. I heard one of you mentioned, I think it was Katie, ease of applying. Common App has made things easy. And I think too, it's worry. I think it's just continued worry. We saw that a lot in the 21 and 22 cycle, students going, I don't really know how this is all going to shake out post-pandemic, test optional practices. I haven't visited the campus. I couldn't get there. So I'm just going to apply. Just going to throw it out there and see what sticks. And then we easily have many students with application lists in the 12, 13, 14, 15 schools who are now sitting here at mid-April going, I've got some great options, and making that decision gets really difficult. So I know our longer lists are leading to your more applications. That's a big trend I heard. And Stacy, I'm just going to piggyback off of what you said. I don't think students, and I wouldn't expect our students to always know all of the legwork that's going on behind the scenes. So you brought up just one of the logistics and having to read applications a little bit, taking a little bit longer to read, having to remove things that normally would be on it. But I also don't know if our students have that full handle on what your offices are dealing with right now. your office and your adjoining office under the umbrella of enrollment financial aid, and what they're scrambling to do that they normally would have had many months to do. And that's to read a FAFSA, build a financial aid package, get it out, and then deal with the calls that come in from seniors, which I know they're making right now. So kudos to you guys. I know you're doing a lot of this really tough admissions and enrollment work with less people, oftentimes with reduced staff. So I know it's tough work, and I know our students don't know all the logistics that go behind it, but we try to spread that information as we can. So before we kind of close out, I'm not going to close on seniors. We'll certainly, everything we're talking about tonight is beneficial for all grade levels, but I did hear some of you mention that. I'd love for you to throw out, whoever wants to, it doesn't have to be everyone, just whatever you have to share with a senior who may be in that position right now, where they're down to a couple schools, they've got an admitted students day maybe this weekend, they're reviewing financial packages, or they're still waiting on packages, wondering what all these extensions mean. Does anyone want to throw out just a couple words of wisdom for our seniors who might be listening, or parents of seniors, as we're in this window of mid-April and decisions are upon us?
You got to visit. You have to visit, and you have to see how it feels. And when you're on the campus, you should know, because it should already at least somewhat feel like home. You have to be able to, see yourself there, which doesn't mean, throw out any concerns about finances. Of course, that has to be really important. It's an investment in your future. You have to be comfortable with, what you're investing. But I recommend visiting is the number one way to know if it's the right fit for you.
I mean, and it goes without saying, right? Just try not to panic yet. The FAFSA finally have started coming into us. So we're doing whatever we possibly can to turn them around and giving you those financial aid packages, right? So you can make the final decision. We know that a lot of students are still out there, still have not committed, still have not decided, and that's okay. We know that. You know that we have, it's taken a lot longer this year for us to have the information to be able to package you. Theoretically, the number should look a little bit better than the past, right? And that's why they had this big overhaul of the financial aid process. But it has been very, very painful for you, trying to get this information, trying to submit the FAFSA, going through all the 1,000 corrections that have gone through, but we're almost there. We're almost there. We are actually seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So we are very, very excited to be able to work with you. But if you send an email to a financial aid office and you don't get a reply right away, just know that right now it's crazy. They've been inundated with work. And as Jen mentioned, they're really working around the clock for you, for your benefit, for you to receive those packages. So just a little bit more patience, but we're almost there.
If you still have questions, ask them. I think that's big. I think, like Stefano said, we are very busy, but we understand that this can be tough. I think, when you think about it, again, this is a decision that you get to be selfish about, because it is something that you are spending the next 4 years. If you choose to do post-grad at that same institution, this is going to be your home for the next 4, 5, 6 years. So really, I use this phrase a lot. You dot your I's, cross your T's, but make sure to ask those questions that you still have. And don't be afraid to ask them. We get, questions from one end of the spectrum to the next. Trust, nothing surprises us anymore. So please reach out to your designated, counselors that you have at the institutions you've been offered a spot at. We want to help you through this process because we do know it can be stressful and overwhelming. So allowing us to help ease any unanswered questions you have, please reach out to us and ask those questions that you still might have.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's the home stretch, and I know how hard you're working. And you make a great point, Katie, when we talk to our students a lot and say that this is your home for the next 4 or 5 years. You never know how long, but it's really part of who you are for the rest of your life. I mean, no matter where you go, wherever, it's beyond a resume, it's beyond an application, it's beyond a framed degree on the wall. It's part of you. You're part of an alumni network, and it's part of you, who you are and your identity. So making this choice, not rushed, by seeing campus, like Jordana said, and by asking questions. So let's let that segue us into asking questions. Let's talk about our not our seniors for a moment, and a lot of our juniors are on tonight, sophomores, even some freshman families listening, who are not quite in that phase of it yet. It'll be here. I tell them it goes fast, and it'll be here soon. I'm in the thick of working with juniors right now, and have been since the midpoint of the year. Our freshmen and sophomores, this process has got a little more time to simmer and cook, but let's talk a little bit about juniors. Some of the big themes we brought up with our juniors when we met with them in groups and individually now are things, everything from building a list, a good, healthy college list of probables, targets, and reaches, thinking really authentically about how they spend their time outside the classroom. Let's kind of dive into those topics. I'd love to hear your thoughts on and suggestions on, as our juniors are navigating through their list, thinking about where they want to visit, using all of the tools out there virtually, social media platforms, your websites, YouTube, to learn about schools, because we know time and resources can be limited to get to everyone. What suggestions do you have when it comes to list building? And if you want to go ahead and dive right into, I get a lot of questions about activities, and we talk a lot about that with students. So let's just dive into juniors. Tell me what's on your mind and what advice you like to give them.
I'll go. I feel like there's so much to say. Um, my best advice would be, when making your list, it's important to have academic, probables, targets, and reaches, but also financial as well. And so to understand the balancing act of that. When it comes to visiting campuses, now's a great time to come, but a lot of times some of our tours may be filled because we're not only accommodating the juniors, but the seniors that are trying to make that final decision. So when you visit the colleges over the summer, keep in mind a couple of things. The majority of our students won't be there. So the campus might feel a lot more desolate than what it's actually going to look like. And I know it's really hard when you're looking out of state, you're looking like where it might require a plane ride or multiple days off from school to justify taking that time away from your senior year. So with that in mind, my best advice is always to reach out to the admissions office of maybe your top 5 or 6 schools now and ask them if there's a way for you to connect virtually with a current student, whether that be like a student ambassador or someone in the department that you're interested in, just so you can kind of feel a little bit more of like a name to a face. So when you're touring campus over the summer, even though it's going to be a traditional campus tour, you have sort of an idea of like what that campus life is going to be like. I also encourage students to utilize our social media platforms to get an idea of what student life could be like. Don't just follow the admissions page, follow the athletic pages, follow student government, follow, any club that you may be interested, the theater, an athletic program, whatever it is. And for my parents, do not join any Facebook group about that particular university. Because a lot of times, and I say this with all the love and respect that I have for my parents, a lot of times those Facebook groups can get a little crazy and a lot of misinformation can be spread. So we work all through the summer. We are here, we are at our desks, we are finishing up our cycle, starting the juniors. Ask us questions. That's going to be the theme of this night. Don't be afraid to reach out to us. We will tell you the truth. Try not to pay attention to what you're seeing on like Facebook and what parents are saying and how things were 5 years ago, because I guarantee you it's not how it is now. And just sort of trust the process a little bit as you begin.
That's great. What else for juniors? Building their list, just thinking about this process, how to spend their time outside the classroom. Is some activity better than another? I know what you're all going to say, but it's important to hear it from you because they've heard it enough from me. What else can we share with our juniors?
I would say, Jen, oh no, go ahead, Jordana. She zipped it. No, what I would say is just listen to the people that have a lot of experience. When you talk to the high school counseling team, to the university college counseling team, make sure you listen to them because they have a lot of experience. They've visited a lot of campuses, and I'm speaking from a university that might not be as well known as the others on the panel. Give it a chance for them to give you a couple of tips about places that you might not have heard. That might be jewels that you don't know about, and might be the perfect match for you. So don't just go by what you hear, what your friends are telling you, where your cousin went, but really talk to the experts and have them guide you to really build a list that it's nicely balanced, and it might allow for some very incredible surprises that you might not have any idea. When we have a lot of students that come to our campus and visit our campus saying, "Oh, my counselor told me to come and visit you," right? They had no idea of what Lynn even was. And then at the end of the tour, they're like, "I don't want to leave. I just want to stay here. This is like the perfect place for me," right? And so give it a chance. Allow for some exploration in your list. Right. That's something I would say that it's maybe a little bit off the cuff, off the the beaten path there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's one of the biggest things we open up with, Stefano, when we talk to our juniors, and I can't emphasize it enough, is, as much as we are so proud of the fact that our students typically go, even with our enrollment changes over the years, our students still matriculate off and go off to over 160, 170 different schools, which puts Hunterdon Central all over the country. And we're so proud of that. But there are the same 30, 40, 50, 60 names that end up on so many lists. And so when I sit with students and I say, look, you have opportunities here to apply to a school that might only get 5 or 6 applications from us. So now that context, that contextual pool of people that you're going to be compared to and against to is much smaller. You may actually increase your chances of admission, possibly even with a merit scholarship. There are absolutely colleges represented here on our panel tonight that can get easily over 100 applications from us. And I remind our students, your competition, who you're compared to students in the same context as you. Yes, they're building a class. Yes, there's thousands and thousands of students vying for spots from all over the globe. But when it really comes down to looking at you, you're evaluated in your context. So when 70, 80, 90 of your same classmates who were offered the same things are applying, you're creating some serious competition. Correct me if I'm wrong, my larger universities. But I like that you bring it up, Stefano, and we tell our students why. They know they're not leaving my office without suggestions. We utilize SCORE as our college and career planning software, and it's got a fantastic feature to allow us to make suggestions based on what we're hearing students are looking for in a school. So great. That's great. Let's, I mentioned it. I want to just dive into it because I get the question so much about activities. Students say, Mrs. N, is it better to do this versus that? Should I drop $6,000 on the summer program? Should I join this society? What should I do? And I say, do what makes you happy. Do what is authentically you, because these folks here on the screen can see folks when you're going through the motions to build a resume. Can you speak to that a little bit? What is there a specific activity that stands out? I think I know your answer, but can you just talk a little bit about how students are spending their non-academic time?
I would offer that the only programs at Montclair where I think the type of activity makes is relevant are things like nursing. Programs that have faculty review, they like to know, our nursing program, like I think everybody's is really competitive, limited space for, the clinical portion. And so they want to make sure that the student really understands what it is to be a nurse, because we don't want to take a space away from another student if they're going to potentially leave the program. So I think if you're interested in a very limited space program and there's an opportunity to do, volunteer work at the hospital, or there's a Red Cross club, or just anything that's going to expose you to the field and confirm that nursing is the path for you. I think that's just a really like niche program where that does rise to the top. And then Montclair has very competitive performing arts programs, and those faculty do also look at the students' resumes, during the audition process. And they are also very interested in, kind of performances and things that student has done. But if you are a music, dance, or musical theater student, that's already your life. So they're probably already doing that. So yeah, I think these areas where you need your passion and your talent can, however it's been fostered out of the classroom, is really important. And I think for those types of programs, it's more important to have, I wouldn't feel stressed to add, 5 other clubs just to have the list. I think it's more about perfecting and really working on those individual pursuits. Otherwise, you should just do whatever you like Jen said. And you should listen to Jen, because you guys don't probably realize that she's like an institution unto herself in the school counselor community in New Jersey and obviously beyond. So Hunterdon Central is very, very lucky to have her. So you should go to all her programming that the department's offering and take advantage of it.
Oh, I echo that totally, Jordana. And I would also say what Jen will tell you, and what I feel strongly that you should know, is that this question is about the smallest part of your application. Your grades, the classes that you've taken in high school, the progression of your academics, your schedule, if you're choosing to challenge yourself, that is really like the bulk of our application review. Like if you want to think about it like a pie, a pizza pie, an apple pie, we are talking about the smallest sliver of the application is in relation to your activities. It's like the cherry on top. You really, really, if you're going to focus on anything, it should be your academic pursuits, right? Like those classes, challenging yourself, getting the best grades you can in the most appropriate curriculum to you. And then sure, I mean, I definitely think you should be involved, but like not at the expense of your academics by any means. And I mean, as far as like, unconscious bias, I love to see students who have a job, and I'll just throw that out there for the parents on there. I think that shows an enormous amount of responsibility. And I also think that it shows that you are probably going to be committed to your academics, because my guess is you are probably going to continue having a job on campus, which means you're probably going to be personally funding a little bit of your academics, which means you probably have a little bit of skin in the game, which means you're going to show up for your classes, which means you're going to do well in your classes, which is going to lead to us retaining you and then graduating you, and then hopefully you getting a job and being a successful alumni, right? So like, I think that can start that process. But I mean, that's my personal feeling about that. But again, that's like the smallest part. So, I mean, if I could reiterate anything, I think the most important thing for you to focus on is your academics. And if you have a passion, you should certainly follow that. And I think what Jen would also tell you is that, like, if you find something like getting in deep to that one particular thing, maybe it is an athletic pursuit that you end up captain of the team. Maybe it's being a Boy Scout and you end up being an Eagle Scout. Like any of those things show us commitment to something you're dedicated to, but like you don't have to show us 10 different commitments. It's like, I think best to choose something that's important to you as a person and then pursue that.
I think overall, what everyone is, saying, it's more so quality over quantity. And I think one of the biggest things too is to remember, with a panel that has so many different institutions on it, again, it's coming from each of our different perspectives. So you really just need to do your research and again, go ask those questions. And because I think, for a place like a Lehigh, where we are looking at your application from a holistic perspective, our pizza pie, the slices are a little more equal. There is an asterisk next to that, transcript and everything, like Stacy said. But when we're looking at it, we want each kind of part of that application to allow you to, really stand out in a way that you want us to see. I always tell my students and families, to put on the application, your activity that you're most passionate about at the top. We get those students that put National Honor Society first, and I'm sure there are students out there that really do appreciate and enjoy being a part of National Honor Society, but I am sure and guarantee you that there is something that you like better than being a part of National Honor Society. So really putting it in an order that matters most to you. And at the end of the day, it is really about, being passionate about those and, listing, 4 or 5 and having some of those leadership qualities rather than what we like to call them as serial members, and listing, 8, 9, 10 different clubs that you joined just junior year and senior year to be able to put them on your application. I think one of the other biggest things that came out of COVID, was like Stacy said, those part-time jobs, but also family responsibilities. Those are activities. We have students all the time that they're going to school from 7:30 in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, coming home, doing homework, having to cook dinner for younger brother and younger sister because mom and dad are at work still. Those are responsibilities. Those are activities. So really making sure you highlight those because again, it is showing those mature and that independence level that you have gained having to have those activities as a part of who you are. So again, at the end of the day, asking those questions and truly figuring out and being involved in things that you really truly have a passion for.
That's great. And I appreciate that because, you're looking, like I say, we put together a diverse panel of institutions. I think it's so important, just like our students are evaluated in the context of Hunterdon Central, you're evaluating in the context of the way your admission office does review, and that could be done really differently. I want to go back to a point Stacy said too about your academics. I mean, our students know that when we host our early college planning groups in ninth grade, when we kick things off, when it's talked about in counselor meetings, ninth and 10th grade. And then we brought it up again when we really went into the college planning process in January with our juniors. The first and most important factor is that transcript, not necessarily the GPA on the transcript. My students know how I feel about a grade point average, that it's a number, and it's a number that's representative of our scale at our high school. But they get really crazy about that number. I've toned that down a little bit. What is so much more important is what you do to get to that number, the courses you take in the context of our high school where there is an advanced curriculum offered. In the context, what are you doing to challenge yourself? What are you doing to go outside your comfort zone and show that you can handle a little bit more in a healthy manner? So we talk a lot. Stacy, you bring up academics is of utmost importance, and that's what we say. We also remind students, though, that your strong academics are at all different levels. I mean, a college is not going to admit every student with straight A's. That would make for the most diverse institution. So we tell students strong academics can be a strong upward trend from freshman year to sophomore year to junior year. So strong academics look different for everyone. I want to remind students that are listening tonight or later on to that, and that those activities are going to mean different things to different schools. But you don't have to do a fancy, robust, extensive internship as a 16-year-old. You can get a part-time job. You can have a little fun in the summer and be a teenager. I think it's so important to reiterate that. So thank you guys for touching on that. Another hot topic that comes up definitely for juniors, and it will start to come up for sophomores, is around standardized testing. We've talked about it at length over many, many years. We saw huge shifts in test optional policies and practices post-pandemic, and it's been in the news again lately. And it's as schools are saying, okay, we did that for 2 or 3 years, but we're bringing scores back. I know we've got a lot of different policies and things going on here with our panelists. But the number one question I continue to get, and I can't say it enough to students, is, will I be at a disadvantage because I choose not to submit my scores? So an institution has presented the option for me to be test optional. Will I be at a disadvantage? Can you please speak to that and tell our students and families the best way to approach that?
So we've been test optional since 2013, aka before it was cool to be test optional. It's actually why I personally wanted to work at Montclair. It's why I applied here, to work here, because they had announced it and I was like, I like that. And I will tell you that it is different for every school. And I would encourage, this would definitely be an excellent question. Some schools are test blind, which means if you send it, they're not even going to look at it. Others will tell you if you send it and it's good and it will help you, then we'll consider it, right? If you send us a good score, maybe we'll use it in your scholarship consideration, right? And then others, if you send it and it isn't, as strong as your transcript looks, then we are going to consider that. So there is no like universal SAT optional definition, and definitely no universal practice in my experience. So I would strongly suggest you bring that directly to your school. For Montclair, we're SAT optional. If you send it, we're really not going to leverage it unless it is to try to give you some more merit aid, like in the context of the rest of your application. Or the other case is if sometimes there's like maybe a borderline student who we're like, are we going to wait list? Are we going to accept? And if they have a really, really strong test score that, shows that they can do it, but then it's also like, well, why is your GPA not matching, right? So then we're looking at the essay. So if you find yourself in that boat, that's where kind of the essay and explaining the context. So the test score can be a contextual thing for an SAT optional school, but definitely speak to the individual schools you're considering.
Other words of wisdom on testing, test optional.
At Lynn, we've been test optional since 2014, so just a little bit after Montclair. And we've realized that we can make very good decisions on admissions, whether or not students submit the test or not. Again, the test, it's a 3-hour test that really is not necessarily directly impactful on how we see a student ability to perform in college, right? We all know that some students are very good test takers, so some students are not very good test takers, but even the students that might not be very good test takers can still be very, very successful. Right, and Lynn would believe that we all learn differently, right? And we know that that's true. So we're absolutely able to determine, looking at everything, but mostly the high school transcript, to see the type. And Jen, what you were talking about is the is the type of courses, is the selection of courses, is the what happened between 9th and 11th, and then going into 12th grade, right? To absolutely tell whether or not a student is going, can handle the college level courses that are going to be put in front of them. So for us, we've realized that being test optional is absolutely fine, as a choice, to determine which students are going to be successful. And in terms of the students, if they want to submit it, they can. If they feel that the test is a good representation of who they are academically, by all means. A word of advice, it's usually like, look at the mid-range of a school. If if you're above the mid-range, maybe it's okay to submit it. If it's below, it might hurt if you submit it and it's it's way below what the university's mid-range is.
Great. Anything else on testing? And we encourage our students to take them. I mean, we have a lot of students who've tested all throughout the spring semester. May and June are big test dates for our juniors, and we do as counselors. So those of you that may not realize, or perhaps you're underclassmen and haven't made your way up to junior year in some of our junior year programming, we are always happy to sit with students and help them evaluate whether or not, based on our professional knowledge and the data we know and our past classes, if we think their scores are going to help their application, or if we think they can be presented better without. So that just so our families know that. But I get the question still all the time: will my application be heard if I don't have them? Will I not get merit scholarships? And I tell students no to both answers. Colleges absolutely award merit aid without test scores, and no, it's not going to hurt you to have them. But just know that without that factor, you have a lot of other things a lot of other opportunities in your application to present strong attributes and strengths. So thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about
Jen, can I just add one
Go
more
right
thing?
ahead.
So it's interesting, right? The state of Florida, all the state schools in the state of Florida require testing, right? So pretty much every student in Florida does take the test, and they don't realize that all of the private universities in the state of Florida, except for one, are test optional. So I would highly suggest to the students applying to a university, make sure you are aware of the whether or not a university is test optional. Don't send it to everyone that you're applying to just because you've taken it. You have to research every single institution and look at the mid-range test score, because we're saying that it might not hurt, but it also might hurt, because if you submit a test score that it's way below what the average at that university is, it will be taken into consideration if you submit it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Stefano. And yeah, coming from a state like Florida that all publics continue to require, well, everyone dropped them. That's a really great point. But I encourage families, like if you're a junior or even a sophomore going through this process, it doesn't hurt to keep an eye on the news. There's a couple topics that have been coming up. We've seen some really, in my opinion, some late announcements on colleges that are requiring scores for this coming fall, which is tough. In all honesty, tough for a junior at mid-April who doesn't have a whole lot of test dates left to make a priority application. So I encourage you to keep an eye on that. My students know that I'm a total geek when it comes to this stuff, and I read the news and all of the blogs and all of my professional group newsletters on a very regular basis, and I try to get that information out as quickly as possible to them. So thank you guys for that information. We have underclassmen that join our programs and listen. Any words of wisdom, advice to freshmen and sophomores who we know are just in many cases still adjusting, getting used to high school, trying to figure out classes to take. We've just gone through our master schedule building for next school year, and adding maybe a little bit of rigor on, or maybe kind of staying the path, figuring out how to spend their time. We're talking about 14 and 15-year-olds, but do you have anything to offer? I know sometimes you get them on your campus for early visits or tagging along with a sibling, but anything you could say as they're sort of building and still having that time to really mold that high school experience, what would you like to say to them?
I'll say try to have fun and enjoy it. I feel like more and more students stress earlier and earlier about college. When it comes to selecting classes and rigor, my best advice is always push yourself to a limit that you feel confident that you can still perform well in the class. Yes, we like to see rigor on a transcript, but we also like to see good grades, right? And we would never want a student to feel like they need to take that AP calculus class if they barely got a B in traditional level, like pre-calculus, right? Like that's not necessary. We want you to succeed within your scope as an academic student. And we're able to see all of that from things, not just the transcript, but your letters of recommendation, your school counselor letter of recommendation, the school report, like just more information like that helps us paint that full picture of who you are as a student. I try to tell students all the time, and it's so hard, especially in this day and age of social media, try not to compare yourself to one another and what other students are doing. You might see a student who's a sophomore that says, oh, I've already toured 4 schools already. That doesn't mean that you're behind or you're not doing something right. It just means that student is an eager beaver, or maybe they have an older sibling and they've been tagging along with them on their college search process. I encourage students to find their niche in high school and stick with it. Find the programs that make you excited. Find the activities that give you a sense of joy that takes away from the stress that can be high school at times. I certainly would never go back to high school if I had the choice and do it all over, because I know it's a lot. There's a lot going on. So all of that is to say, take every day with stride and utilize your network of people, your parents and guardians, your close friends, your family, your teachers that you really trust, your guidance office, your college counselors. Use those resources to help you through, even not like outside of college and the college search process, just the everyday. The more times that you can reach out and ask for help or just ask for somebody to talk to, the easier things feel and the less big and overwhelming and scary things can seem. That was a very long-winded answer, but hopefully somewhere in there that made sense.
Great. Any other thoughts, words of wisdom for students moving through the early years of high school, but starting to really think about this process and what they can do?
Yeah, Sam provided some great advice there. Mine is just a little bit more practical in terms of a physical thing that you can do. So if you have a neighbor or an older sibling who is they say they're coming to visit Penn State in 2 weekends, or what South Carolina, like wherever it is that they're going, or if you have a science fair competition and it's at Montclair, like you should take advantage of being on college campuses and getting the opportunity to start looking at college campuses you as soon as you can. Like we have younger siblings that are in junior high that come along, but if there are things that stand out to you, starting a list as early as your freshman year to just start thinking about like the qualities that you're looking for and the things that felt good or you were interested in or you were interested in learning more about. Starting to do that earlier will help narrow that list of 4,000 down to that, ideally, I guess 8 or 9 or whatever, 12 that you guys are up to applying. It should take a little bit of, you can like front load the process a little bit, take a little bit of that search as opposed to being at the end of your junior year, beginning of your senior year. You can spread it out a little bit. We would be happy to have you come visit our campuses. There are not like age limit cutoffs. Like you do have to be an accepted student to visit our accepted student programming, but our, prospective information sessions, or even if you're coming to visit for a basketball game or an ice hockey game, whatever it is, taking advantage of that as early as possible, I think could be a good step in a positive direction.
I think
Yeah.
as cliche as it sounds, I think making a pros and cons list is truly it's incredibly helpful. Because I think when you write down, what having a general idea of what you're interested in, whether it's academic focused, whether it's, socially focused, what type of campus you're looking for, what size of campus, those things you can definitely start early. Your mind might change, but I think that's why having it written down is so important because you can physically see your thoughts written out. And I think that is so beneficial in the long run. Like Stacy said, just really having a list and starting it early, but really saying, okay, this is what I'm looking for in a college campus, or going on tour and leaving and be like, this is not what I'm looking for. And that's okay. Knowing that, you are going to go to some college campuses and they're not for everybody. And that is perfectly okay. And that is why there are so many and you have options. But I think creating that pros and cons list is truly going to be helpful in the long run.
And I'm totally with Stacy and Katie there. Visiting colleges early on, can really give you a sense for the type of environment that you want to be in. And, sometimes even two universities that on paper might look the same, same number of students, same majors, can feel completely different. Our president always says the decision to go to college happens between your heart and your gut, right? When you walk in, you're just going to feel it. You're going to feel the magic or you're not going to feel the magic. And that's going to be so, so important. And the other thing that I would say, don't stress out so much about a major. I feel that some families, have to, before they make a decision to apply to university, know exactly, what they're going to do once they quote unquote grow up, right? It's not like that. That's usually not the way it happens. There's a very small number of students that know exactly what they want to do, and they're going to stick to it, and they're going to, go through with it, and they're going to start working in that specific sector. But if you look at Department of State, statistics as to, the number of jobs that your generation is going to have, you're going to have 12 jobs by the time you're 40. Right. So picking a specific major doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to stick to that job environment for the rest of your life. Right. And for the most part, a lot of the jobs are going to be available by the time that you graduate college. We don't even know what they are. So picking a major right now, it's almost a futile exercise. So, think about the fit first. Right. And if you are in a place that makes you feel good, you are going to find, where you need to be.
That's great. That's a great point, Stefano. So you guys are giving great advice. This is really, really helpful. I'm looking at our time and I want to use our last, 10 to 12 minutes or so. I want to get to some of our questions as I've been looking at them through our webinar. They're kind of all over. You guys can see them as well. But I'm going to try to clump them, and it's actually going to take us back to the beginning when we were talking a little bit about seniors and selectivity. So two things came up, and I feel like I want to bring them up again, our 9th, 10th, and 11th grade families listening, you're not dealing with this right now, but I think it's so important because it will absolutely come up. Two big topics right now: who gets in and why. So selectivity, as the seniors are talking to each other, but so and so has so many APs and great scores and all the activities. They did everything right, and they did, but they weren't admitted. So I know that's a tough one. I'm not expecting you to have the golden answer to that, but I want to at least center our discussion around it. And the other big topic right now is who gets money and why. So who gets merit? How do they get merit? So I know, because I know, having done this almost 20 years now, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. There's an institution that has to be built, and there's a lot more factors to this, just that you have a fantastic transcript. Your activities are stellar. You wrote an incredible essay. Your recommenders are off the charts. I know there's more to it. What can you say to our families on really what's happening in your offices as you're sitting around table, or you're making decisions through committees and making decisions about finances? Can any of you shed light without giving lots of inside info, just so families and students can get a little better understanding on those big decisions that you have to make?
I think that as a general rule of thumb, and I can't speak for every institution, but for the most part, colleges and universities are balancing wanting to, having to like go through and like yield a class while also maintaining institutional goals and what the institutional goals are for that year, for the 10-year plan, 5-year plan, whatever it may be. And sometimes, unfortunately, an institutional goal might not align with being able to admit every high caliber student, and it's a really tough thing to process when you go through it. One thing that I try to stress to my families is that, unfortunately, this isn't personal. When we waitlist a student, when we deny a student, we are not telling you specifically, we don't want you. That's not the case. If we could take all of our admissible apps, we would. We just can't. We have each individually institutional goals that was set forth by our university's board of trustees, our president, our VP of enrollment, that we have to maintain. And at the end of the day, we are businesses. And sometimes businesses does mean making really tough decisions. And we can be very empathetic to your experiences, and we can talk to you about things like in transferring and ways to get to each of our individual schools if we are your end goal. But try to just remember that sometimes it's not personal. It truly is just business. And also, and this, I might not be super popular with parents and students when I say this, you are not privy to every reason that a school makes a decision. And I know that stinks. I get that. But you are not, we know school is going to tell you the ins and outs, the who's, the what's, the whys of why we make our decisions. That's for us to know. And there are going to be times where it might not make sense, and you may call us and ask why, and we might just tell you, competitive year, X amount of apps, this is what we looked for, and you try to spit out facts, and we will just tell you that's all the information that we're going to share with you. And that's how that's going to work sometimes. I'm not saying it's great, I'm not saying that it's right, but it's something that when you begin to go through this process to understand, this process isn't personal for us, and you're not privy to how we handle the ins and outs and the intricacies of our admissions policies all the time.
Please know that none of us like that part of the job. That is not something
I'm not trying
any
to
of
be the
us
Debbie
enjoy.
Downer. I'm not trying to be the dream killer. I'm just a realist.
It is one of the least favorite parts of our job, because we know that you have put so much time and so much effort into applying to our institutions. But like Sam said, sometimes it's just that year. And I think we could all get t-shirts on it that says it depends on it. The amount of times we say that, and it's not fun to hear. But I'm gonna skip to the merit question, just because Lehigh is one of those institutions that does merit very differently. And I think that is the point I would like to get across is, again, it goes back to a lot of things we're talking about, is you have to do your research on it. Each institution is very different in how they view merit, how they grant merit. For Lehigh, it is something that is very selective. It is something that is, we tell students and families all the time, merit at Lehigh is not something you should bank on to pay your way through a Lehigh education. We are very selective. We are very prompt in how we select our merit recipients. But again, you are going to have it very different at all institutions. So trying to have an understanding that again there are certain institutions that are going to base it just off of grades and GPA. At a place like Lehigh, the merit scholarships are actually coming from our office, our admissions office, so our budget is a little different than our financial aid office. So again, going back to asking those questions, and not necessarily, again, banking on those scholarships. But, again, at the end of the day, you have to ask those right questions, but understand that the processes and the way and why we do things is very different across the board. And I think Sam kind of hit the nail on the head. Sometimes we just cannot talk about those things that we are privy to and you are not. And it is truly, again, not something that we enjoy. But it does play a part of that higher ed process.
So I'm going to offer that families can go on any institution's website. There's a net price calculator that we're all required to have. And it's not required that you necessarily bake in your merit strategy into the calculator, but a lot of schools do. So that is a great tool to kind of see what it looks like you might be receiving. You can plug in different scenarios. The opaqueness surrounding admission and financial aid is definitely one of the worst parts of higher education. It just is. And the institutional award strategies are as diverse as the institutions themselves because of the reasons that Samantha and Katie mentioned. Some schools put a lot more money into their need-based, right? Some schools are all about merit-based. You will usually find that private schools have more money that they can offer you. Your aid package normally will look bigger to a private school because their cost is a lot higher, right? So a lot of times students will ask me to match an award letter from, I don't know, I'll pick on Seton Hall because we get, they're right down the road from us. And I cannot, and I will not because their cost is so much higher. So there's just so many strategies based on the kind of school and what kind of budget they have available and the student population, that it's impossible to give a great answer, unfortunately, that's going to satisfy, anybody. But so the resources I will tell you for your own research, definitely the net price calculator. Some schools, I know there are some New Jersey schools that actually have their full scholarship matrix on their website. Like if you have this GPA, you can, anticipate this scholarship amount, and there could be an SAT built in there. So spending some time on the internet, and checking the scholarship pages for the schools you're interested in could be very, very helpful. I would also point out that in New Jersey, we do have that Garden State Guarantee, which offers free or discounted tuition for families in certain income brackets. Now, Hunterdon Central, where not a ton of families are going to fall into that bracket compared to other areas of our state, but just something to kind of be aware of if you're staying in New Jersey, that there are a lot of these tuition-free programs, including at Montclair, for students who are in a certain income level. So look for those as well.
That's great, Jordana, and thank you guys for those resources. I've got to go back to some things that Sam said, and I know, I'm sure a lot of you listening realize that I know my colleagues here with the work we do, and I know Sam, and I cannot tell you, Sam, how much I appreciate that honesty. And I know it would come from any of you. There was a couple points I wrote down that, and I probably said it 3 times in my office today, and I'll say it. to those of you listening, whether you're a senior, a junior, or this process is a couple years away, it absolutely does not define you. These outcomes that you're getting from these schools do not define who you are. You are not a college decision. And I said it over and over in my office today, and it brought some tears out in some, but it didn't work out, and it's not always going to work out. So not only do we shift to realizing that it may not work out, we actually just start to work on coping with it. And that's in a generation, I always say, we talked a little earlier in this program about being a high school student. I don't think I'd want to be a high school student. I don't envy some of the challenges and obstacles that our teenagers are dealing with today. But when you can really wrap your head around the realization that once you submit those applications, no matter how hard you've worked on them, and we coach and guide heavily at our school to help our students produce and put themselves out there in the best light possible, you truly do lose control of this process. And it's hard because sometimes at 17 or 18, you've had some control over things, or control's been in your life, but when you click submit, you lose it. You really do. There are things you can do with certain schools throughout the process if they show interest, if interest is calculated, or interviews are part of it. Every school is different, like the shirts, Katie. It depends. Every school, it depends. But I just try to remind people, and I really like, Sam, some of the things you said. And this isn't personal. What your outcome isn't personal. The money you may or may not get isn't personal. It should not define you. But I do like that you mentioned, if there's an institution you want to be at, really, really want to be at, you did your research, that there are other pathways. This is not a direct entry fall after your senior year. There are transfer pathways. There are other institutions that will accept you with open arms and let you take a seat there for a semester or a year, or maybe you'll fall in love with it and stay, but they will allow you to transfer. So there are other pathways to your favorite school. So you brought up a few things, Sam, that we could never pack it all into a 90-minute program. I appreciate you guys being transparent and saying, look, you can't know everything behind the scenes. We certainly don't as counselors. We can use our best educated guesses and judgment, but we don't, and we should never know, because this is a tough profession. I don't envy the work you have to do. But thank you just for your transparency. We're down to the final minute. Quick words of wisdom, advice to any of our grade levels. Doesn't have to be all of you, but real quick final thoughts before we head out for the evening.
I'm going to jump and say this because to just piggyback off of what you just said, I did not go to what I thought was going to be my dream school. I thought I was going to be crushed. I was devastated. And I absolutely adore my alma mater. I love it so much. It was the best 4 years of my entire life. I made so many amazing friends. It got me on the path in my career that I'm so thankful to be on. I know. And so if you're sitting there thinking, oh, you are on, whether you're spiritual, religious, whatever it may be, you are on the right path that you are going to be on. You are going to end up at the school that is right for you. I promise you. Take it from me. I thought my life was over when I couldn't go to my top choice. And I have no regrets.
Great, thank you. Anything else from anyone else as our students are moving through this process? Stefano, I saw you unmuted there.
I was just going to say, at least for me, when I read an application, I love to see people that really love us. So I look for like little tidbits of information to really tell me that the students have done the research. And there is we have one question on the application that's like, why have you applied to Lynn University? That is the first thing that I go to when I read an application. I want to know if the students have, done the research, have a reason that is a very specific reason as to why they have applied to us. There's a thing called demonstrated interest, in the way that we look at students. And I feel that that's a very important part of the process, right? When you fall in love with a place and you want to tell people that that's your place, that's where you feel that you found the right match. Because I think that at least in the way that I see the application process, that has a big weight.
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead, Katie.
I think it is kind of this weird phenomenon when you think about it, because you as students spend so much time preparing for senior year and really getting ready for that next step in your academic and social and life experience, and you do kind of put not all of your eggs in one basket, but you kind of give that freedom, like Jen said, of losing that control. And you know, we go through those moments of, you know, usually September through March of, you know, making these decisions and dotting our I's and crossing our T's. And then there is that weird phenomena where then we all lose control. And it's up to you. And I think that moment where you get that control back and you have those choices, you have every right to be selfish in those choices. Because again, you are going to be spending your next 4 years at this place that is going to be home away from home. So again, making sure you ask those questions, doing your research. And I think like Sam said, like you're going to end up where you're supposed to end up. And it truly is a gut feeling. You're going to know. So trust that. I know it can be hard in these moments, but trust those feelings and know that it's all going to end up okay.
It does. It really does, everyone, end up okay. That's a fantastic note to end on. If you guys are okay with it, I want to be respectful of your time because I got so many indications that you guys have a ton on your plate right now. And I just can't thank the five of you enough for joining us tonight and speaking to our community. Thank you for those that tuned in and listened. As all of our programs at Central were recorded, so this will be on our YouTube station within the next couple of days. I hope everyone got some good advice. Thank you all again. I'll connect with you soon. But we'll let you all go for the evening. Take care, everybody. And thanks again. Have a wonderful evening.